Every oak tree that towers above the forest floor spent years growing in darkness, sending roots deep into earth no one could see. While other plants competed for sunlight above ground, the oak was building an invisible foundation that would one day support extraordinary height and withstand the fiercest storms. The question that should shake you awake right now is this: what are you building when no one is watching? Raise your hand if you've ever felt frustrated watching someone else succeed while you're still struggling. Keep it up. Now, here's what I want you to understand. That person you're watching didn't become successful in the spotlight. They became successful in the shadows, in the quiet moments when no one was keeping score, when no one was cheering them on. They built their strength in private, one invisible choice at a time. We live in a world that demands constant performance, endless updates about our progress, immediate results. But here's the truth that will either liberate you or terrify you. Your most powerful growth happens in silence. The person you're becoming is shaped not by your public victories but by your private decisions. Your character is formed in the moments when no one is watching, when there's no applause, when there's no recognition. Let me tell you about a man who understood this principle better than anyone else I've known. For 3 years he worked a small plot of land behind his house. Every morning before dawn he was out there, hands in the soil, tending plants that seemed ordinary to anyone who might have glanced over the fence. His neighbors thought he was wasting his time. His family worried he was becoming obsessed. But he had a vision that no one else could see. He didn't talk about his plans. He didn't post pictures of his progress. He didn't seek advice or validation from others. He simply worked day after day, season after season, learning the subtle art of cultivation. Then, in his 4th year, something extraordinary happened. His harvest was so abundant, so perfect, that people came from 3 counties over to see what he had accomplished. Suddenly everyone wanted to know his secret. The secret wasn't in his techniques, though they were excellent. The secret wasn't in his soil, though he had enriched it carefully. The secret was in his willingness to grow in silence, to build his expertise away from the pressure of others' opinions and expectations. He had discovered the first way to build yourself quietly, mastering your internal dialogue. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a conversation happening in your mind. It never stops. From the moment you wake up until you fall asleep, you're talking to yourself. You're commenting on everything you see, judging every situation you encounter, and most importantly, you're creating your reality through the quality of these thoughts. Most people have never taken control of this internal conversation. They let it run wild, like a garden overrun with weeds. They allow negative thoughts to take root, self-doubt to flourish, and fear to dominate their mental landscape. Then they wonder why their external life reflects chaos and limitation. Your mind is like a garden that needs constant tending. Just as you wouldn't expect a beautiful garden to maintain itself, you cannot expect positive results from an untended mind. The thoughts you allow to grow in the fertile soil of your consciousness will inevitably manifest in your external circumstance. This is not wishful thinking. This is the fundamental law of mental causation. When you catch your mind engaging in negative self-talk, you have a choice. You can let it continue, watching it poison your confidence and sabotage your efforts, or you can redirect it towards something more constructive. The discipline of thought watching, catching and redirecting your internal commentary, is the foundation of all personal power. Here's a technique that will transform your life if you practice it consistently. When you notice your mind spiraling into negativity, stop what you're doing and take 3 deep breaths. On the first breath, acknowledge the negative thought without judgment. On the second breath, remind yourself that thoughts are not facts. On the third breath, choose a more empowering thought to focus on instead. This isn't about positive thinking or denial. This is about taking responsibility for the quality of your mental environment. Every morning, before you engage with the world, spend 10 minutes taking inventory of your thoughts. What themes keep appearing? What patterns are you reinforcing? What stories are you telling yourself about your capabilities and future? The second way to build yourself quietly grows naturally from this foundation of mental discipline. Once you've begun mastering your internal dialogue, you need to develop unshakable principles that will guide your decisions regardless of external circumstance. Success comes from internal standards, not external validation. The people who achieve lasting significance in any field share one common trait. They have developed a set of principles that they will not compromise, regardless of pressure, temptation, or temporary convenience. These principles act as an internal compass during life's storms. Look around you and you'll see two types of people: those who bend with every wind of opinion and circumstance, and those who stand firm on their foundation of principle. The difference between them isn't talent, luck, or connections. The difference is internal structure. One group has built their life on the shifting sands of others' approval. The other has built on bedrock. Every small ethical choice you make is either strengthening or weakening your character. When you choose honesty over convenience, integrity over advantage, or excellence over mediocrity, you're not just making a decision, you're building the person you're becoming. These choices compound over time, creating either unshakable strength or inevitable collapse. Here's a simple test that will reveal the quality of your principles. When facing any decision, ask yourself this question: if this choice were made public and everyone I respect knew about it, would I be proud of my decision? If the answer is yes, proceed. If the answer is no, find another path. This 5-minute principle test will keep you aligned with your highest values. I knew a woman who applied this principle to every aspect of her business. When competitors cut corners, she maintained her stand. When customers tried to pressure her into compromising her values, she politely declined their business. When market conditions made it tempting to reduce quality, she found creative ways to maintain excellence. For years her growth was slower than her competitor. But when the market shifted and customers became more discerning, her reputation for integrity became her greatest asset. Her commitment to private integrity had built public success. The third way to build yourself quietly requires something that makes most people uncomfortable: deliberate solitude. The world's most successful people guard their alone time like a precious resource, because they understand that silence amplifies your ability to hear opportunity, to process complex information, and to make decisions from wisdom rather than reaction. There's a crucial difference between loneliness and powerful solitude. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of yourself. Most people avoid being alone with their thoughts because they've never learned to enjoy their own company. They fill every moment with noise, distraction, and activity, never allowing themselves the space to think deeply or listen to their inner wisdom. But here's what happens when you cultivate deliberate solitude. Your mind begins to operate at a higher level, without the constant input of others' opinions and the pressure to respond immediately to every stimulus. You start to hear the subtle signals that most people miss. You begin to notice patterns, to make connections, to see opportunities that others overlook. Create sacred space in your day when you're completely alone with your thoughts. No music, no books, no tasks, just you and the silence. Start with 20 minutes. If that feels impossible, start with 10. The goal isn't to achieve some mystical state. The goal is to become comfortable with your own mind and to develop the ability to think without distraction. During these quiet moments, ask yourself important questions. What am I learning from my current challenges? What opportunities am I missing because I'm moving too fast? What would I do differently if I weren't concerned about others' opinions? What does my intuition tell me about the path I'm on? The answers won't come immediately, but if you maintain this practice consistently, you'll begin to develop an inner guidance system that's more reliable than any external advisor. You'll start to make decisions from a place of calm confidence, rather than anxious reaction. You'll find yourself naturally gravitating toward opportunities that align with your true purpose. Can you sit in silence for 20 minutes without reaching for a distraction? If not, you're missing access to your most powerful resource, your own mind operating at full capacity. The connection between inner peace and outer achievement isn't just philosophical, it's practical. When you're not constantly agitated by external noise, you can think more clearly, make better decisions, and recognize the right opportunities when they appear. Now, here's what I want you to understand about these 3 foundations: mastering your internal dialogue, developing unshakable principles, and cultivating deliberate solitude. They work together like the root system of that oak tree I mentioned at the beginning. Each one strengthens the others, creating a foundation that can support extraordinary growth. When you control your thoughts, you naturally develop better principles, because you're not being led by emotional reaction. When you have strong principles, You naturally crave solitude because you're not dependent on others' approval for your sense of worth. When you practice deliberate solitude, you naturally develop better thought control because you're not constantly bombarded by external influence. The world will eventually see what you've been quietly building, but only if you have the courage to grow in silence first. While others are performing their lives for an audience, you'll be building real strength. While others are seeking validation for their efforts, you'll be creating value. While others are talking about their plans, you'll be executing yours. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you have an opportunity to begin your first silent growth session. Before you check any messages, before you interact with anyone else, spend 30 minutes with yourself. Take inventory of your thoughts, clarify your principles, and sit in productive silence. This isn't a one-time exercise. This is the beginning of a new way of building your life. The world doesn't need another performer. It needs people who are willing to do the invisible work that creates visible results. It needs people who understand that the most powerful growth happens in darkness, that the strongest foundations are built in silence, and that real success comes from who you're becoming, not what you're displaying. The oak tree didn't grow tall by accident. It grew tall because it was willing to spend years building roots that no one could see. Your time of invisible growth is not wasted time. It's the most important time you'll ever invest. Start building yourself in silence today, and watch what becomes possible when you stop performing and start growing. The most powerful people you know built their strength in private, one unseen choice at a time. Now that you understand the foundation, controlling your thoughts, living by principles and cultivating solitude, you're ready for the next level of silent growth. But here's what separates those who merely understand these concepts from those who achieve extraordinary results. Invisible disciplines. What are you doing when no one is keeping score? When there's no audience to impress, no metrics to meet, no deadlines to pressure you? These moments reveal who you really are and determine who you'll become. Your private actions are creating your public reality, whether you realize it or not. How many of you have been fooled by the illusion of overnight success? Show me by raising your hand. Keep it up. Now, here's the truth that will either inspire you or frustrate you. There is no such thing as overnight success. Every person you admire who seems to have suddenly achieved greatness has been practicing invisible disciplines for years. They've been building their capabilities in secret, preparing for opportunities that hadn't even appeared yet. Think about the musician who spent a decade practicing scales in a basement apartment, neighbors never knowing that perfection was being forged in silence. When he finally stepped onto the stage and delivered a performance that moved thousands to tears, people called it natural talent. They never saw the 10,000 hours of private practice, the repetition, the refinement, the patient pursuit of excellence, when no one was watching. This is the hidden architecture of success, the invisible disciplines that create visible results. While others are looking for shortcuts and quick fixes, masters are building their skills through consistent, private practice. They understand that real power comes from what you do when no one is keeping score. The fourth way to build yourself quietly requires you to completely change your relationship with difficulty. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid problems, seeking comfort, choosing the easy path whenever possible. But here's what they don't understand. Challenges are not obstacles to your growth. They are the mechanism of your growth. Every difficulty you face is the universe's way of strengthening you, of preparing you for the next level of your development. When you understand this natural law, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How is this making me stronger?" This shift in perspective changes everything. Look at the pattern of your own life. Haven't your greatest periods of growth followed your most challenging experiences? The job you lost that forced you to develop new skills. The relationship that ended and taught you about your own worth. The financial setback that made you more resourceful and determined. Difficulty followed by growth is not coincidence. It's natural law. The problem is that most people break under pressure because they've never trained their minds to stay calm in chaos. They've never developed mental resilience. They approach life's challenges like someone who's never exercised trying to run a marathon. Their mental muscles are weak because they've spent years avoiding anything that might strain them. Mental resilience is like any other strength. It must be developed through practice. You cannot wait until you're facing a crisis to start building this capacity. You must train your mind to remain calm and focused when everything around you is falling apart. This training happens in the small moments, in the daily choices to stay composed when someone cuts you off in traffic, when your computer crashes, when plans change unexpectedly. Here's a technique that will transform your relationship with difficulty. When you encounter any problem, immediately ask yourself 3 questions. First, what can I learn from this situation? Second, how can this make me stronger? Third, what opportunity might be hidden in this challenge? This obstacle reframe method turns every difficulty into a training ground for resilience. Start practicing this today by deliberately choosing the harder path in small decisions. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Have the difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. Complete the challenging task first instead of procrastinating. These small acts of choosing difficulty are building your capacity to handle larger challenges with grace and strength. I once knew an entrepreneur who used every business rejection as training for persistence. When investors said no, he didn't take it personally. He treated it as practice for his presentation skills. When customers complained, he didn't get defensive. He used it as data to improve his product. When competitors tried to undermine him, he didn't waste energy on anger. He focused on making his offering so superior that comparison became impossible. His silent struggle with difficulty built the kind of public confidence that eventually made him unstoppable. The 5th way to build yourself quietly is mastering selective attention. The power of what you choose to focus on. Your attention is your most valuable resource. More precious than time, more powerful than money. Yet most people scatter their attention like seeds in the wind, wondering why they never harvest significant results. Successful people guard their mental energy like a vault. They understand that what you consistently focus on expands in your life. Focus on problems, and you'll find more problems. Focus on opportunities, and you'll see possibilities everywhere. Focus on what you can control, and you'll feel empowered. Focus on what you cannot control, and you'll feel helpless. Right now your mind is being pulled in dozens of directions. News that makes you anxious. Conversations that drain your energy. Information that adds nothing to your life but takes everything from your peace. You're suffering from attention deficit, not because you have a disorder, but because you've never learned to direct your focus intentionally. The difference between being informed and being overwhelmed is the difference between drinking from a cup and drinking from a fire hose. You need enough information to make good decisions, but too much information paralyzes your ability to act. Most of what you consume mentally each day is neither useful nor uplifting. It's just noise that prevents you from hearing your own wisdom. Here's how to develop laser focus in a scattered world. Start each day by identifying one thing that matters more than everything else. Not 3 things, not 5 things, one thing. This is your priority, and everything else is secondary. When distractions arise, and they will, you have a clear standard for decision-making. Does this serve my primary focus, or dilute? The art of saying no to good opportunities, so you can say yes to great ones, is perhaps the most difficult skill to master. Your natural inclination is to keep your options open, to pursue multiple paths simultaneously. But power comes from concentration, not dispersion. The sun's rays can warm you, but focused through a magnifying glass, they can start a fire. Practice this selective attention in small ways first. When you're in conversation, focus completely on the person speaking instead of planning your response. When you're reading, resist the urge to check your phone every few minutes. When you're working on a project, eliminate all distractions and give it your full attention. These micro practices of focused attention build your capacity for sustained concentration. Ask yourself this question and answer it honestly. Am I feeding my mind strength or weakness? The information you consume, the conversations you engage in, the content you watch, is it making you stronger, wiser, more capable, Or is it making you anxious, confused, and overwhelmed? You have complete control over your mental diet, but only if you exercise that control consciously. The sixth way to build yourself quietly involves developing invisible skills. The abilities that no one sees but everyone benefits from. These are not the skills listed on your resume or displayed in your portfolio. These are the subtle capabilities that determine your effectiveness in every area of life. Think about the people who consistently achieve more than others, not because they're smarter or more talented, but because they've mastered the invisible skills that multiply their effectiveness. They know how to listen in a way that makes others feel heard. They know how to observe situations and read the currents beneath the surface. They know how to be patient when others are rushing and decisive when others are hesitating. They understand timing, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait. These invisible skills cannot be learned in a classroom or mastered in a weekend workshop. They're developed through consistent practice in real-world situations. They are refined through years of paying attention to what works and what doesn't. They're the result of behind-the-scenes preparation that creates in-the-moment excellence. The most successful people I know spend hours preparing for conversations that last minutes. They practice skills that will never be publicly recognized. They study human nature, not to manipulate others but to serve them more effectively. They understand that mastery is not about showing off what you know, it's about applying what you know so skillfully that it appears effortless. Here's how to develop invisible skills. Commit to improving just 1% each day in areas that matter. If you want to become a better listener, practice giving people your complete attention in every conversation. If you want to develop better observation skills, spend time each day noticing details that others miss. If you want to improve your timing, study successful people and notice when they choose to act and when they choose to wait. The compound effect of these small improvements is extraordinary. 1% better each day means you're 37 times better by the end of a year. But most people want dramatic improvements immediately, so they never commit to the gradual progress that creates lasting change. Why do masters continue learning in silence long after they're recognized as experts? Because they understand that true mastery is not a destination, it's a way of traveling. The moment you think you've learned everything you need to know is the moment you stop growing. The invisible skills that got you to your current level are not the same invisible skills that will take you to the next level. Now, all of this growth in silence means nothing if you're simultaneously sabotaging yourself in secret. The behaviors that destroy us when no one is watching are more dangerous than any external enemy. While you're building strength in public, you might be tearing it down in private through excuses, procrastination, and blame. Excuses are the poison of potential. Every time you explain away your lack of progress, you're programming your mind to accept mediocrity. Every time you blame circumstances for your results, you're surrendering your power to change those results. Every time you procrastinate on what matters most, you're voting for the person you used to be instead of the person you could become. The success mentality asks, what can I do to make this work? The mediocrity mentality asks, why won't this work for me? The success mentality takes responsibility for results. The mediocrity mentality takes credit for efforts. The success mentality sees failure as feedback. The mediocrity mentality sees failure as proof that they should quit. Here's a framework for identifying and eliminating negative patterns. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 questions. First, what did I do today that moved me closer to my goals? Second, what did I do today that moved me away from my goals? Third, what will I do differently tomorrow? This evening review and course correction prevents small problems from becoming large failures. The importance of private accountability cannot be overstated. You must be willing to admit your mistakes to yourself before anyone else notices them. You must be willing to correct your course based on results, not intentions. You must be willing to hold yourself to higher standards than the world demands of you. Build the habit of self-correction by catching yourself in the act of self-sabotage. When you hear yourself making excuses, stop immediately and ask, What would I need to do to make this work? When you feel the urge to procrastinate, ask, what am I avoiding, and how can I face it now? When you catch yourself blaming others, what part of this situation is within my control? Your future self is watching your present choices. Give them something to be proud of. Every invisible discipline you practice today is creating the visible results you'll enjoy tomorrow. Every excuse you eliminate, every skill you develop, every moment of selective attention you practice, these are the building blocks of the life you're creating. The hidden architecture of success is not hidden because it's secret. It's hidden because it's simple. It's hidden because it requires patience in an impatient world. It's hidden because it demands consistency in a world that celebrates bursts of activity. It's hidden because it asks you to focus on process while everyone else is obsessed with outcome. But now you understand the invisible disciplines that create visible results. You know that mental resilience is built through difficulty, that selective attention multiplies your effectiveness, that invisible skills determine your impact, and that private accountability prevents self-sabotage. The question is not whether these principles work. The question is whether you'll work them. In a world screaming for attention, the most radical act is to build yourself in silence. Now that you understand the foundation and the invisible disciplines, you're ready for something that will change not just your life, but your entire approach to success. You're ready to start a quiet revolution. Are you performing your life or living it? Think about that question seriously. Too many people have turned their existence into a performance, constantly seeking validation, approval, and applause from an audience that doesn't really care about their success. They've confused activity with achievement, noise with progress, and attention with accomplishment. Real power comes from self-mastery, not self-promotion. The most influential people in history weren't the loudest. They were the most prepared. They weren't the most visible. They were the most valuable. They understood that true strength is built in private and revealed through results, not declared through announcements. There was a CEO who built $1 billion company while maintaining complete privacy about his methods. No interviews, no conferences, no books about his secret. While his competitors were giving speeches about their strategies, he was perfecting his. While they were building their personal brands, he was building his business. While they were seeking recognition, he was creating results. When journalists finally discovered his success, they found a man who had revolutionized an entire industry without anyone noticing how he did it. This is the paradox of true achievement. The less you need external validation, the more valuable you become. The less you need to prove yourself to others, the more you can focus on improving yourself. The less you need to announce your progress, the more progress you actually make. Here's what happens in your brain when you commit to growing in silence, and why this approach is not just philosophically sound, but scientifically superior. Your mind processes and integrates learning most effectively during quiet moments. When you're not performing for an audience, your brain can focus all its energy on actually absorbing and connecting new information. Think about how you learned to walk. You didn't give daily progress reports to your family. You didn't worry about what other babies might think of your technique. You simply practiced, fell down, got back up, and practiced again. Your brain was free to focus entirely on the complex task of coordinating balance, movement, and spatial awareness. The learning happened naturally because there was no pressure to perform. The same principle applies to every skill you want to develop as an adult. When you remove the pressure of external judgment, your mind enters a state of flow where learning accelerates. You can experiment without fear of failure. You can make mistakes without embarrassment. You can take the time needed to truly understand, rather than rushing to demonstrate competence. Neuroscience has shown us that skills become automatic through a process called myelination, where neural pathways become more efficient through repeated use. This process happens most effectively when you're focused on the task itself, not on how others perceive your performance. Public accountability can actually hinder this natural learning process by creating anxiety and self-consciousness that interfere with skill development. But here's where many people get confused. There's a crucial difference between healthy privacy and unhealthy secrecy. Healthy privacy means you're not dependent on others' opinions for your motivation. Unhealthy secrecy means you're hiding because you're ashamed or afraid. Healthy privacy creates space for growth. Unhealthy secrecy creates barriers to growth. When you practice skills in silence, you develop automatic competence, the ability to perform at a high level without conscious effort. This only happens when you've repeated something so many times in a relaxed state that it becomes second nature. The moment you add external pressure too early in the learning process, you interfere with this natural development. The compound effect of unwitnessed effort is extraordinary. Every hour you spend developing yourself, when no one is watching, creates capabilities that will serve you for decades. Every book you read in private expands your thinking. Every skill you practice in silence increases your value. Every principle you apply when no one is keeping score strengthens your character. How many of you have tried to build a habit and given up when no one noticed your efforts? Raise your hand. This is exactly why most people fail at personal growth. They're doing it for the wrong reason. They're seeking external validation instead of internal transformation. They want credit for their efforts instead of results from their actions. All natural growth follows predictable cycles that you must understand if you want to maximize your development. Every seed that grows into a tree passes through the same three phases: the underground phase, the breakthrough phase, and the harvest phase. Your personal growth follows the same pattern. The underground phase is when you're planting and watering seeds that no one can see. You're reading, learning, practicing, and preparing. Nothing dramatic is happening on the surface, but everything important is happening beneath it. This is where most people quit, because they don't see immediate results. They don't understand that this phase is not just normal, it's necessary. During the underground phase, you're building the root system that will support your future growth. You're developing the foundational skills, knowledge, and character traits that will make your eventual success sustainable. You're creating the internal capacity to handle the external opportunities that haven't appeared yet. The breakthrough phase is when your underground work suddenly becomes visible. Opportunities appear, results multiply, and recognition arrives. People call this luck, but you know it's the natural consequence of your preparation meeting opportunity. This phase feels sudden to observers, but it's actually the predictable result of consistent underground work. The harvest phase is when you reap the rewards of your silent preparation. Success flows naturally because you've built the capacity to handle it. You're not overwhelmed by opportunities because you've been preparing for them. You're not surprised by challenges because you've been strengthening yourself for them. Here's the critical insight. Trying to skip the underground phase leads to weak results that don't last. You see this with lottery winners who lose their money, with people who get promoted before they're ready, with anyone who achieves success without building the character to sustain it. External success without internal development is temporary. How do you recognize which phase you're in and what it demands? During the underground phase, focus on input, learning, practicing, and preparing. Measure your progress by your consistency, not your results. Trust the process even when you can't see the progress. During the breakthrough phase, focus on execution, applying what you've learned, and seizing opportunities. This is when your preparation pays off, but it requires courage to act on what you know. During the harvest phase, focus on gratitude and giving back. Success without significance is empty. Use your achievements to lift others, to solve problems, and to leave the world better than you found it. The patience required for this natural development is perhaps the most challenging aspect of growing in silence. We live in a culture that promises instant results, immediate satisfaction, and rapid transformation. But nature doesn't work that way. The oak tree doesn't become mighty in a season. The master doesn't develop expertise in a weekend. The leader doesn't build influence in a month. There was a writer who understood this principle perfectly. He wrote 1,000,000 words in private before publishing anything. Every day for 3 years he wrote 2,000 words. Some days the writing was terrible. Some days, it was mediocre. Some days, it was good. But every day he wrote. He wasn't worried about readers because he didn't have any. He wasn't concerned about critics because no one was reading. He was focused entirely on the craft of writing, on developing his voice, on learning his trade. When he finally published his first book, it was immediately recognized as the work of a master. Critics praised his mature voice, his sophisticated style, his apparent natural talent. They had no idea they were seeing the result of 1,000,000 words of practice, thousands of hours of silent preparation, years of patient development. This is why silent consistency beats public intensity every time. The person who practices quietly every day will always surpass the person who practices dramatically once in a while. The person who reads 30 minutes daily will learn more than the person who reads for 8 hours once a month. The person who improves 1% each day will achieve more than the person who tries to improve 50% once a year. Your daily disciplines are the most important decisions you make, but they're also the most invisible. No one sees you choosing to wake up 30 minutes earlier to read. No one notices you taking the stairs instead of the elevator. No one applauds when you choose water instead of soda, when you listen instead of talking, when you think before reacting. But these small choices compound into extraordinary results. Your morning ritual of mental preparation before the world intrudes sets the tone for your entire day. Your evening ritual of reviewing and refining the day's lessons ensures you're learning from your experiences instead of just enduring them. The power of consistent small actions over dramatic gestures cannot be overstated. The person who saves $10 a day will have more money than the person who saves $1,000 once a year. The person who exercises 20 minutes daily will be healthier than the person who exercises for 3 hours once a week. The person who improves their skills 15 minutes a day will advance faster than the person who attends a weekend seminar once a year. How do you measure progress when no one else can see it? You develop an internal scorecard that's more accurate than any external measurement. You know when you're growing because you can handle situations that used to overwhelm you. You know when you're improving because challenges that used to frustrate you now energize you. You know when you're developing because you're becoming the person you used to admire. The internal scorecard measures character, not just achievement. It measures who you're becoming, not just what you're accomplishing. It measures the quality of your thoughts, the strength of your principles, the depth of your wisdom. These are the metrics that truly matter because they determine everything else. Your quiet revolution begins today with specific steps you can take immediately. First, identify one skill that would significantly improve your life if you mastered it. Not 5 skills, not 10 skills, 1 skill. Then commit to practicing it for 30 minutes every day when no one is watching. No exceptions, no excuses, no negotiations with yourself. Second, create your personal silent growth plan. Choose a time each day when you'll work on yourself without any external input. No phone, no internet, no distractions. This is your sacred time for reading, thinking, planning, and practicing. Protect this time like you would protect your most valuable possession, because that's exactly what it is. Third, develop the tools and techniques you need to sustain this practice. Create a space in your home that supports focused work. Gather the books, materials, and resources you'll need. Eliminate the distractions that pull you away from your growth. Make it easier to do what matters and harder to do what doesn't. The most common obstacles to maintaining this practice are impatience, isolation, and inconsistency. You'll want to see results faster than they naturally appear. You'll feel alone because you're not getting external validation. You'll be tempted to skip days when you don't feel motivated. Here's how to overcome these obstacles. Remember that impatience is just inexperience with the natural timeline of growth. Remind yourself that the best work happens in solitude, not in crowds. Understand that motivation is not required, only decision is required. You don't need to feel like practicing, you just need to practice. The long-term vision of who you're becoming through this practice should inspire you during the difficult moments. You're not just learning a skill, you're becoming a person who commits to excellence. You're not just improving your abilities, You're developing your character. You're not just achieving goals, you're creating a life of meaning and significance. Your silent growth will eventually serve others in ways you cannot imagine. The skills you develop in private will solve problems for people you haven't met yet. The wisdom you gain through quiet practice will guide decisions that affect lives you haven't touched yet. The character you build through invisible disciplines will inspire others to begin their own quiet revolutions. This is the ripple effect of one person committed to quiet excellence. When you stop performing and start growing, you give others permission to do the same. When you stop seeking approval and start seeking improvement, you model what real success looks like. When you stop making noise and start making progress, you show the world that substance matters more than style. The transformation that awaits those who commit to silent growth is not just personal, it's generational. You're not just changing your own life, you're changing your family's future. You're not just improving your own circumstances, you're improving your community's possibility. You're not just developing your own potential, you're contributing to humanity's progress. The world doesn't need another performer, it needs people who understand that real change happens quietly, that true strength is built in private, that lasting success comes from who you're becoming, not what you're displaying. It needs people who are willing to start a quiet revolution. Your time of invisible growth is not preparation for your life, it is your life. Every moment you spend developing yourself in silence is a moment invested in a future you can't yet see but can definitely create. Every discipline you practice in private is a vote for the person you're becoming. Every choice you make when no one is watching is a building block in the foundation of your legacy. The oak tree that stands tall in the forest started as a seed that fell in silence. It grew in darkness, strengthened in storms, and reached toward light without fanfare or applause. Today it provides shade for those who need rest, oxygen for those who need breath, and beauty for those who need hope. This is the power of growing in silence. This is the promise of the quiet revolution. This is the life that awaits those who have the courage to build themselves when no one is watching, to develop their gifts when no one is cheering, to pursue excellence when no one is keeping score. The world will eventually see what you've been quietly building, but only if you start building today. Your quiet revolution begins with your next choice. Make it count.